Welcome to season 14 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week I am talking with Ben Shapiro of Atlas Tennis. Ben and I actually met several years ago when he was working for another company, but 2 years ago, he partnered with some amazing folks in the tennis industry to create a summer tennis and travel opportunity for junior players ages 13 to 18. They go to 2 to 3 to 4 different countries, training on different courts, playing in tournaments against their European counterparts, and in the process get to do some great sightseeing, have some cultural exchanges, and just have an all-around great time. So I hope you enjoy my conversation with Ben, and we'll go to the show notes, click on the links to get more information on the 2026 offerings from Atlas Tennis, because they are doing some great things over spring break and also over the summer. So now sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Ben Shapiro of Atlas Tennis. Hey, Ben, welcome back to the podcast. I am super excited to hear all the things going on with Atlas Tennis and how your trips went last summer and what's coming for summer 2026.
Lisa, good to see you. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
Of course, of course. I think this opportunity for junior players is super cool. Our listeners may remember I was trying actually to organize a trip to Europe last summer. Weren't able to make it happen, but I'm so grateful that you guys are there and provide this opportunity for our junior players to travel, to train, to compete, and to meet kids from other places, to experience what training looks like in other parts of the world, and to come up close and personal with some of their tennis idols.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have had some amazing experiences thus far, hitting on all of those things, from playing in new places, experiencing new cultures, getting to go to Wimbledon and other pro tennis tournaments. We've done awesome so far, and we're just excited because we feel like we're just getting started and there's so much more to do, and we have some pretty lofty goals for 2026, but very excited to kind of kick that off and look forward towards all that's coming up for us.
So before we dig in, can you just kind of give us an overview of what Atlas Tennis is? Who it serves, what its purpose is, and how you kind of came up with this notion to kick this off.
For sure. So at the very highest level, what Atlas Tennis is it's about tennis, travel, and human connection. Those are our pillars, kind of our North Star. Everything we do is focused on how can we make those three things kind of work together towards creating these unforgettable experiences for young people, for junior tennis players. Our age range is 13 to 18, but that is also a little bit of a loose number. We actually had a 19-year-old this summer. So young people is kind of how I would kind of describe our demographic, who we're trying to reach and touch. What we do is we create these 2 to 3 week trips for junior players to travel mostly to Europe, to experience new countries, meet new people, see what tennis is like in different places. Our groups are made up of players from all over the US and Canada. We've had amazing diversity geographically, and that really adds to kind of the magic of what we're able to do. And we expose them to experiences they wouldn't be able to see or be a part of otherwise, whether that's playing tournaments in places like the Netherlands or Spain against junior players, whether that's going to Wimbledon, getting to watch the matches there and meeting some of the players, getting to watch them play, and then talking to them after the match. We give them the opportunity to play on different surfaces like grass courts in the UK, red clay all over Europe, other types of surfaces that don't even really exist in the US. Ultimately, our goal is to create these experiences for young people to do things that they otherwise would not be able to do in the sport. We have an awesome team that helps put these all together. In addition to myself, my co-founders, kind of founding partners, Eric Buderak, Megan Moulton-Levy, Sam Duval, Andrew Chmura. All of them are super involved in the world of tennis. Megan is on the board of directors of the USTA. Eric is one of the executives that basically helps to run the US Open. Sam is the agent for a number of top players. He's the agent for John Isner, a number of other kind of men and women, both recently retired and active. And then Andrew runs Grand Slam Tennis Tours, which is a company that for 25 years now has been creating travel experiences for tennis fans. He focuses on not just juniors and young people, but all tennis fans that want to have tennis experiences they can't get otherwise. So combining all of their backgrounds, experiences, connections, it just unlocks doors for us that we feel are truly one of one experiences. And that's what kind of drives us and why we decided to do this, because we have such a unique foundation of people to create truly, unprecedented experiences. And so far so good. And we're just kind of more excited as we go to keep adding to what we're able to offer.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts first, and then we'll kind of talk about how the past years have gone and what's on deck for this coming year. First of all, how many kids do you take? How many adult to kid, like what's your ratio of adults to kids? And what is the process for somebody getting to go on the trip? Do they have to apply? Do they have to be accepted? Yada, yada.
Yeah, so our group sizes are between 10 to 15 players. That's the sweet spot we've found, where there's enough kind of variety so that you're not always hitting with the same people, but it's not so big where it becomes a little bit more unwieldy to move around and to travel. Within that group of 10 to 15, there'll be 2 to 3 coaches that are with the group all the time, 24/7, from the time we leave and fly over to Europe until we fly back. So the relationship that they build with each other between players and coaches is really unlike anything else, any other program, because you're really together for, all day, every day for the most part. And that's one of the most rewarding things is watching those relationships grow, not just between our players, but with the coaches, who a lot of them are college coaches or former college players, who all have really impressive backgrounds and have a focus and are, emphasizing this team camaraderie aspect to every trip anyway. So kind of a lot of good things combined there to make it a pretty memorable experience, touching on that like human connection piece. In terms of how you apply, how we choose someone to be on our trip, it is a selective process. The success of these trips really hinges on having awesome groups of kids that are excited about the opportunity, are excited to potentially step out of their comfort zone and be challenged and be pushed. Obviously, within reason, we're not trying to, run a super strict, we're not running laps all the time. We're not making it miserable, but just by the nature of going to new countries, trying these new experiences, there's an element of stepping out of your comfort zone. So we want to make sure that players are prepared for that ahead of time. So there's a pretty extensive application that players and their families have to go through. Just in addition to the kind of obvious information that we ask for, there's a number of essay questions, or I guess short answer questions, I'll say, where we ask, why do you want to go on a trip? What are you hoping to get out of this? What's something you're maybe nervous about? And we ask similar questions to both players and parents, which helps us to make sure that they're going to be a good fit, and also helps us and our coaches to know, how can we help each player get the most out of this experience? How can we meet them where they are so that we don't have to force them to meld to what we do, but to try to kind of adjust to what's going to resonate with them. Some players, it really strikes a chord when, we push them and we're a little bit harder on them, and others don't respond as well to that. They need a little bit more TLC, or maybe just a different approach to how we help them get better. And it's important that our coaches and myself, because I like to get on the court as well with our players, meet them where they are to help them get the most out of this. So that's a huge part of the application process. The other piece that is, very important is we ask for references. We ask for a tennis reference so that I have the chance to personally speak to their tennis coach, learn a little bit more about what they're working on, make sure their coach understands that we are not going to mess with their technique. We're not going to do a lot of long-term projects because we only have them for 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to help them learn how to compete, learn how to maybe make little tweaks, especially in matches and in competitive situations. But in terms of what they're working on with their second serve or with their backhand, we're not touching that, but it is helpful for us to know what is already kind of being told to them so that we can potentially help reinforce that. And then we also speak to a non-tennis reference, usually someone from school, or it could be a clergy person, um, or just some adult that can kind of speak to one, this person's character, how they respond to different situations. Again, it's not really a way for us to, weed out the kids that might be troublemakers. That's not really a concern. Obviously, we don't want that, but at that point, if people are applying, it's hasn't really presented itself as being an issue. It's more, again, for us to learn about each kid so that we can make sure that from the second we take off, they're getting the most out of the experience, and our coaches have that background to help maximize what they get out of, 3 weeks, which, goes like that.
Just as important, how do you vet your coaches that are going to be traveling with these children?
Yeah, that is for as extensive as the application process is for our players, it's 3 times as long for coaches, in terms of just countless interviews, double the number of references, both tennis references so that we know these are legit tennis coaches, and then also references completely separate from tennis. I want to know how our coaches are working with other people, working specifically with teenagers, how they've experienced travel before, have they kind of navigated other countries, have they traveled with a group before? These are all things that we want to know so that they are 100% prepared and have the necessary and relevant experience so that they can first and foremost make sure it's a safe trip from start to finish, but also make sure that everyone is getting the most out of it. When you're traveling, if you don't have a good plan, you're wasting a lot of time, you're bopping around, you're waiting for this, for that. We're in these incredible places. It's important that we're getting the most out of every moment. So our coaches need to be like dialed in on how to make that happen. We give them a lot of kind of information and training and detailed kind of here's what today looks like, here's where you're going, all of that. But we also have to make sure that these are people that are super experienced. Of course, USTA Safe Play certification is a requirement. Just making sure that they understand what's appropriate, what's not, different kind of pieces of compliance. And ultimately, we don't want people where this is their first experience working with junior players before. We get a ton of interest from current college players or people that maybe have done other things and are like, this sounds amazing. I get to coach and travel around Europe for a few weeks, um, which is true. It is an awesome experience, but because of that, we're able to be quite selective, and we've been super lucky. We've had awesome coaches up to this point. Last summer, we had some college coaches. Actually, the associate head coach at University of North Carolina was on one of our trips, so he brought just an incredible background and wealth of experience at so many different levels of the sport. We had another coach who has worked as a teacher and school administrator for over 20 years, and his ability to connect with young people was so unique and so special. And then we also had some, younger coaches who were more recent college grads who were still, eager to jump on the court and, play a set with our players and kind of grind with them. And kind of also had that eyes wide open experience of going to these new places. I myself, when I graduated college, the first few years in the summer, I worked as a coach on a similar type of experience. And I still have so many fond memories. I learned a lot about um, you know, how to do all of this, how to kind of make it happen at a higher level, which is what we're doing now. But if you find the right coaches and the right people that have that combination of experience, responsibility, and also excitement about this opportunity, it really combines to make for an awesome trip.
Is there a minimum or an expected tennis level for the kids that want to travel with you guys?
Yeah, so we have different trips and we are able to accommodate pretty much every level of tennis. We had last summer multiple trips. On the low end, we had players that were pretty new to the game, obviously had played before, and we're excited about the idea of playing, multiple hours for multiple sessions a day. But we're, not necessarily even tournament players. I would probably put them at a, high JV level or low varsity, high school varsity level. And then on the high end, we had players that were 10 plus UTR looking to play, potentially D1 college tennis, and everything in between. So what this is one of the biggest questions we get is this going to be a good fit for my child? Either, you know, I think my child might be too good, or I think my child might not be good enough, and they're gonna be overwhelmed. Um, it's certainly a balancing act, but it's something that we've been able to make not just work, but really allow every player to thrive, whether they're our top player, who is truly playing at a 10 plus UTR, or someone that you know, hasn't played very many matches in their life. Uh, how we do that, there's a number of ways. First is we try to build each trip so that there's not that huge range within the same trip. Um, each itinerary is appropriate for any level, but once we get kind of some good enrollment, we'll start to nudge people towards the group that we think is going to be the best fit. If one group has a bunch of 8s and 9s UTR wise, and we have a 3 UTR, we might say, hey, that trip, we'll make it work if that's really what the one you want to go on, but we're going to highly recommend this other trip where there's some 3s, 4s, and 5s. That might be the better option. And just through kind of being super upfront with people and telling them this is what it looks like, this is where I think your child's going to fit in the best, we're able to build these groups that are balanced. That said, in any tennis program you do, whether it's a trip to Europe, whether it's your, clinics after school or anything in between, there's always going to be a range. And that's when the quality of coaching really comes into play. So our coaches get specific training on how to design practices, design drills, set up matches that allow for players of a range to get a good experience, a good kind of training environment. Last year before our summer trips, I actually went down to JTCC in Maryland, where Megan Moulton Levy, one of our co-founders, is one of the executives there. And I spent an entire day just watching her staff, talking to her coaches who are outstanding. These are coaches that have built, players like Frances Tiafoe, Robin Montgomery, and picking their brains on how do they build these practices for, a huge range of players. And I watched them make awesome practices with players that have, a 4 or 5 point range in their UTR. And those are kind of some of the skills and training that we give to our coaches so that they're well equipped to make it work as well. At the same time, when you have someone like Tyler Thompson, who was a coach from UNC, who worked with us this summer, he's been doing this for 20 plus years. I honestly learn more from him than the other way around. So when you have good coaches, they can make it work with a pretty big range of levels. And then the other kind of missing link here that I didn't mention yet that's huge is that the tournaments we play in Europe are often level based. So there'll be draws, not just based on, 18 under, 16 under, open, but on your rating within that country. So, our players that go to the Netherlands, for example, I will assign them a Dutch rating based on their UTR and kind of converting it. I've done it enough times. I have a good eye for a, 7 UTR equals a 5 in the Dutch rating. I'm making that up, so don't quote me on that off the top of my head. But through that, we're able to make it so that our players of a huge range of UTR are getting awesome matches. They're playing 3-setters. They're getting good matches against people at their level at the same week, at the same site. And it's just one of those things that makes these European tournaments so awesome, is that they're truly welcoming, not just from a friendliness standpoint, but from the way that they're designed to get players of all levels good competitive matches, which there are so many benefits to. But that's a long way of saying, we make it work with a huge range of players. The number one kind of factor that we need to kind of figure out before we go further is your child eager for this experience? Are they ready to push themselves, to play a lot of tennis, to have these experiences off the court? And if they are, we will make it happen for them to have an unbelievable experience.
I love it. I love it. What is the cost to go? And I know obviously it's different if you're going for 2 weeks versus 3 weeks, but kind of give us a range.
For sure. So most of our trips, like I said, they're 3 weeks. That's kind of the full length, plus or minus a few days. Some are, 18, 19 days. Those trips start at 10,000, and then go slightly up from there. But I would say on the high end, at around 12,000 for our kind of most expansive trip. Those numbers do go up a bit as we get closer to the departure date. Just, as we get closer, things get a little bit more expensive. So there's certainly a benefit to, signing up earlier rather than at the last minute. But we can obviously accommodate people that maybe do not figure out their plans until a little bit later on. And what that number gets you, because that's always the question, what does that include? Is it includes pretty much everything once you're in Europe. The one major cost that's not included is airfare from the US to Europe and then the return flight as well. The reasons for that are, it's going to be cheaper or more expensive depending on where you're flying from. Those flight prices kind of fluctuate all the time. And some people like to use, points and miles to fly. So we encourage everyone to fly on the same flight. We leave from New York, but if someone says, you guys are flying on this airline, I have a ton of points on a different airline, can I just have my child meet you at the destination? 9 times out of 10, we can make that happen, and we do. So we try to be flexible with that. But besides the airfare, pretty much everything is included. All the accommodations, every tennis expense in terms of courts and academy fees, entry fees for tournaments, balls, coaching, that's all included in that price. Most meals are as well. Some lunches aren't, and then most breakfast and dinner are. There's a few that aren't, but for the most part, everything's included. There's a couple, laundry isn't included, souvenirs. But essentially, if you are signed up, there's not much kind of added on cost because I totally understand people want to know, what does this cost? Give me a rough idea. If there's a few small add-ons, that's one thing, but we're not looking to say it's $10,000 and then adding on another, 3, 4 grand. That's definitely not how it looks. And in terms of like all the details, what the breakdown is of what's included and what's not, it's all on our website, and I can also, share that directly with people based on, what it actually looks like from past years.
And I'm assuming you give people a suggested amount of cash to bring with, or, um, a credit card to bring with, so that the kids can cover all those additional expenses that aren't included in that initial price.
100%. These days, it's pretty much all credit card. I would say I think every single player had at least, Apple Pay on their phone. That's the way to go in 2025, 2026, as opposed to, carrying around cash and having to convert it between countries. But yeah, it's fortunately not a ton of added cost. We try to be as all-inclusive as possible while still keeping it logistically easy, because sometimes it's actually easier to separate things out.
Sure, sure. Okay, so now that we've got the nuts and bolts, tell us what a typical day looks like on your trip. And I know it's a little bit different if they're in a tournament or watching a tournament, but maybe give us kind of both those scenarios, and tell us all the good stuff that's happening.
For sure. So I think that this is so cliche, but like there is no normal day on an Atlas tennis trip. But I'll give you kind of a really realistic, solid tennis day. People ask like, how much tennis are you playing? And it's hard to answer that. There are days where we'll take an off day and you won't hit a tennis ball, or it might be raining. But most days there's a good solid amount of tennis. So a pretty representative day of what you can expect is, a wake up at ballpark, 8 a.m., breakfast at the hotel, head over to our practice site, say at 9 or 10 for a couple hours of practice. Now, when I say a couple hours, it could be 2.5 to 3 if there's no afternoon matches, or it could be a 30 to 45 minute warm up if someone has, a couple matches later in the day. Sometimes players will just kind of be there and watching those that don't have a match play more. So it's very kind of flexible. We're always adjusting based on the tournament schedule, but a morning tennis session is very much the norm. especially before it gets too hot in some of the places in Southern Europe. So we do a couple hours in the morning. Then after that, usually some time to rest, get some lunch. We try to stay in places where the players can kind of walk around in groups, not too far, but walk around to some of the different places to get food, try the local cuisine, just have a little bit of free time to relax. Sometimes they'll go to the hotel room and just chill in the AC, cool off. Sometimes, if we're in Spain, they might go over to the beach and walk around there. Different options depending on where we are. And then as the day goes on, as we get into the afternoon, it usually turns into tournament time where we'll go to the tournament site, which is often different from where we're practicing, just based on court availability. And players will either have matches, they'll be watching their friends play, they'll be hanging out at the club. In the Netherlands, for example, we go to a club that they set up like a temporary grass court in the middle of their kind of like lawn, and our players love to mess around on that. Or maybe they'll jump on an open padel court and play some padel or ping pong, or they'll watch soccer or tennis in the clubhouse with some of their new friends from the club. So just time at the club is kind of how I would describe a lot of our afternoons and evenings. There's a lot of tennis being played, of course, but there's also, I would say, much more to do in the downtime than at junior tournaments in the US, where I feel like more often than not, everyone's just kind of sitting quietly, maybe on their phones, and it's very tense. None of that. It's the least tense atmosphere you could imagine, and it's fun. Often the players that don't have matches are just as eager to get over to the tournaments as the ones that actually do. Um, as the day goes on and we kind of get into the evening, of course, dinner becomes the next focus, and sometimes we'll eat at the club, sometimes we'll go to a restaurant in the nearest town, sometimes we'll split up. Some players will have 9 p.m. matches. So one coach will take a group to go get dinner, and another coach will stay and watch the matches. Again, it varies. That's why we always have 2 to 3 coaches, so we can be flexible and split up. We're not always staying as one unit. Um, and then, ideally we're back winding down the day by 10, 11 p.m. at the latest. Honestly, there can be some late matches, and there might be one player and coach that doesn't get back until late. They have the late shift, and especially in Northern Europe where the sun doesn't set until 10:30. You don't realize it, but it's like, oh wow, it's almost midnight and I just finished my match. That's, I think, one of the magical things about summer tennis in Europe. So there can be some late nights, but at the same time, we try to get everyone good solid 8 hours, at least the opportunity to rest and recover, because one of the most common things that I can pretty much guarantee will be the case is that our players are pretty tired by the time we get to that third week, in the best way possible. But the combination of a ton of tennis, a ton of just stimulation socially, a little bit of jet lag, all this newness, it's tiring. And by the time the trip is over, everyone is ready for, a good solid few nights of rest in their own bed. But as we go, we try to, balance the excitement and all the activity with enough downtime so that no one is getting kind of overrun or too tired.
How many different cities or countries do you visit over the course of a typical trip?
Yep. So a typical trip, like I said, 3 weeks, 3 different countries, or at least 3 different destinations. So we don't want to be moving hotels and moving too much, because it just, it gets uncomfortable if you never have a chance to unpack. So, the kind of general template is a new country each week. And that allows for just an awesome variety of different places. We try to have each trip have a good balance of different types of places. We'll do more of like a beach destination in Southern Europe combined with a northern destination where it's a little bit cooler, where just everything's different. The architecture is different, the food is different, the language is different. So that within that 3 weeks, everyone's getting a really good variety of experiences. And that's a cool thing about these trips, is that when we get to JFK and we're about to take off, and I'm asking kids on the trip, where are you most excited to go? I could ask 5 people from the same trip, and I'll get different answers for each. Some are excited to go to the beach, some are excited to see castles, some are excited to go to a specific country, some are excited to practice the language that they've been learning in school. Some might have a family friend or their heritage is from one of the countries, and that's what they're excited about. So by building these itineraries that go to a lot of different places within that 3 weeks, it just creates a lot of different excitement and keeps people kind of ready and stimulated throughout. We're not just like hating all the good stuff in week one and then it's kind of a slog to get through the next 2 weeks. There's always a new experience, something new and exciting around the corner. And that I think actually is a great antidote to some of the tiredness that can happen when you're traveling for 3 weeks, which it definitely can be like intimidating at first. People hear that 3 weeks. Whoa, I've never gone away that long. I've only done a week vacation with my family. But I can pretty much guarantee it feels a lot different. And by the time everyone's getting a little tired and kind of feeling a little, not waking up quite as easily, it's time to go to the new country and it just injects this new energy. And that kind of sustains us through the 3 weeks.
Love it. Love it. What's on tap for 2026? Where are you going? How many trips do you have scheduled? And how many
Yeah.
kids do you think you're going to be able to accommodate this year?
Yeah, so we're going big in 2026 for the summer. We have
This
at
is
least
your third year, right? This will
this will
be
be
your
our
third year?
this will be our third summer. So far we've done, like I said, the summer trips, but then also some spring trips, which I'll touch on in a second as well. But looking ahead to next summer, yeah, we're looking to do 4 or 5 trips. We have 4 locked in, confirmed on our website, ready to go. Enrollment has already started. And there is good potential that we're going to add a 5th trip, especially if interest continues to, be where it's already been. And it's only November to kind of have the interest we've had has been awesome. So, and there's a good chance we'll not only want to, but need to add a 5th trip to be able to accommodate everyone. But we're looking at a combination of going to some of the places we've already had awesome experiences and already have these relationships and familiarity, combining with some new places. So to run through like our signature trip that we've done the last couple of years that is just at this point tried and true. We know everything, we know where we're going. The clubs know what to expect from us. It's just, it's a bit more of a plug and play. We know it's going to be a home run because we've done it. That trip starts in Spain, about an hour north of Barcelona, where we're hosted at a tennis club of, a good friend of mine, right on the beach. Easy week, just good weather, sunny, lots of tennis on red clay, lots of tournament play, awesome food. Um, and then obviously a day in Barcelona exploring. That transitions into a week in the Netherlands at probably my favorite tennis tournament I've ever been to. Just super welcoming people, awesome club, unbelievably organized tournament. I think every tournament director in the US should go over there and do a site visit just to see like what it looks like to accommodate a tournament with over 500 people, making it work for, 1 week, and often having like some rain delays mixed in there too. But somehow they always finish on time, with just a lot of happy people. And then that trip finishes in Switzerland, in the Alps, just some of the most stunning scenery you could imagine. We go to a tennis academy in Verbier, run by some former pro players, including Roger Federer, like former doubles partner. So that's always fun, just hearing stories from him. They welcome us with open arms, and then we finish in Geneva, beautiful city, and then fly home from there. So that, like I said, tried and true. That is just an awesome option. Other trip that we did last year that we're gonna kind of do a new and improved version of. It's called the bucket list. It starts at Wimbledon, so people can check that off their bucket list. We do a day at Wimbledon, getting to watch the matches. Last year we were able to spend some time with pro players. We probably spent 45 minutes talking with Marcos Giron, asking questions. He gave us a lot of his time, which was awesome. And that's the kind of thing we're able to set up just through our connections in the industry. And then we also got to watch Cam Norrie on court one, and then meet him after he won his match. He thanked us for supporting him. That was super cool experience. And then being in London is also just amazing city. We play on grass courts at a nearby club, so that's just like truly a bucket list experience to be at London and experience all that Wimbledon brings. From there, this year we're going to go to Spain and have an awesome week playing some tournaments outside Barcelona, training on red clay, just classic Spanish tennis week, sightseeing and going to the beach as well. And then we'll finish in the Netherlands at a different tournament, also just amazing organization, big tournament, tons of people, but just run so well. Friendly people, everyone speaks English, which is great. They're kind of eager to learn about us. And especially in the Netherlands, I found a lot of their junior players go to play college tennis in the US. So they're, very interested in, talking to us, learning about what junior tennis is like, what college tennis is like, and a lot of times there's mutual connections already because they have friends at different schools. And it's a fantastic atmosphere, beautiful country, easy to just get around. Feels very livable, I guess I would say. So those two trips are our, repeats of what we've already done. We know they're awesome. They were awesome last year, and we're excited to kind of do them again, but better. We're also adding a couple new ones. So we have one I called the Castle to Coast trip. So we're going to start in Scotland. Just unreal architecture, unreal kind of history. Obviously, a lot of tennis background now with the Murray brothers. So we'll be based at a tennis club 5-10 minutes from where they grew up. It's actually has red clay courts that they used to train at that, Andy Murray would play at. There's cool pictures of him being there as a junior. They run an awesome tournament there in end of June, early July that we're excited to play, and then obviously experience the kind of beautiful city of Edinburgh. From there, we'll go to southern France. So from Northern Europe, where it's a lot cooler and maybe little bit cloudier, to the south of France, to the French Touch Academy, which is one of those. It's I would say kind of bang for your buck, might be the best tennis academy in Europe. Just not quite the same level of maybe social media as some of these other academies, but just like good, solid tennis coaches, good facilities, a number of French pros train there, and a ton of French players that play college tennis in the US come from this academy. So excited to be a part of that, to mix in with their programs and mix in with all of their players, not only French players, but players from all over the world that come there for the summer. So that should be kind of a cool balance between a tournament and then a training week. And then we'll finish in a new country for Atlas Tennis. We're going to go to Portugal, which has been one of the most requested countries for us to go to. I've been there a number of times independently from these trips, and just the warmest people, beautiful weather, beautiful architecture, amazing food, easy to get around, lots to do, and some really solid tennis academies, tennis clubs, some eager people that are excited to welcome us and kind of roll out the red carpet. So that's going to be an awesome week, and it also coincides with an ATP tournament that takes place in Estoril. So we'll be able to catch a day there before we head home. So that's going to be, I think, just a great balance of different places on that trip. And then the last trip, I call this one the legendary trip. This one, we're trying something new. We're just going all in on some of the best academies, most famous academies in Europe. You know, this is a little bit of a change, I think, from what we initially had envisioned what Atlas Tennis would look like. But you know what? People want to go to these places, so we're going to make it happen. So we start in London, go to Wimbledon, just knock off a huge bucket list item for people. From there, we go to Mallorca, and we're going to do a week at the Rafa Nadal Academy. I don't know what more needs to be said. It's becoming more and more of a legendary place. The name speaks for itself. That's going to be unbelievable, and they're excited to welcome us. I think it's going to be a kind of win-win for both us and for the academy. From there, we head back north to Good to Great Tennis Academy, which is just outside of Stockholm. Maybe not the same name brand value as Rafa Nadal Academy, but not too far behind. Some of the players that have trained there, Wawrinka, Monfils, Shapovalov, those are just a few. Magnus Norman, and Michael Tillstrom are a couple of the guys behind that, and these are, unbelievable players and now unbelievable coaches as well. So it's just an academy that they know what they're doing. They're excited to welcome us. They're going to put together an awesome program of training and competition. specifically for our group, kind of catered to our level, our age group. And it's going to be awesome. It's a new country for us as well. Sweden definitely has been requested. Just experiencing Scandinavia, different culture, especially in the summer with those like long, long evenings, like 19 hours of sunlight. I think it's going to be an awesome end to the trip. And yeah, I just can't think of a more exciting experience than going to Wimbledon, the Nadal Academy, and then good to great. So the legendary trip felt like a fitting name. So those are the 4 trips that we have already on the website. Like I said, they're ready to go. Enrollment has started. I think all of them have so many positives. People may be wondering like, which is the best for me? Right now, the answer is honestly whichever one sounds the best. There are no right or wrong answers. As I kind of touched on before, once we get a little bit further into the enrollment cycle, we may, recommend certain trips for people based on playing level. But at the moment, as we're kind of just past launch date, they're all they're all amazing options. And I think if one maybe seems like too much or too intense, there's another one that maybe will be the right fit. But I hope that the excitement that I have about getting to even be a part of these trips kind of comes through because I don't know. I mean, I'll be in Europe the whole time, but I don't know which trip I'm going to want to go on. I'm going to want to be at 4 places at once at all times.
I was just
So
getting ready to ask you, where do I sign up? I want to
yeah.
go on all of them. They all sound amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And I'll also mention, before we even get to the summer, we're also trying something new this year. We're going to do a spring break trip. We've done in the past spring break trips for schools, for like high school tennis teams, which we're going to be doing again. We actually have a couple trips already planned, one to Florida, one to Barcelona, potentially adding a couple more as well. So if you have a high school team that might be looking to do a trip, we're more than eager to make that happen and can really customize it based on what works best. But then we're also going to do a trip separate from a school trip. It's just for anyone that wants to sign up. And it's going to go to Miami for 5 days, just in and out, 5 solid days of training, some competition, some playing with, local junior players from down there. A day at the Miami Open, getting to watch the pros. Hopefully we'll try to meet some as well, and then most likely a training session with one of the pro coaches that's down there for the tournament. Last year, we set up a session with the former coach of Venus and Serena, who ran a training session for our group that was down there. They thought it was like the coolest thing ever. So we're going to build on that and do that again, either with him or with some other coaches as well. And again, kind of focus on those like one-of-one experiences that you can't get anywhere else. And our hope is one, it's a great option for spring break for people to do something a little bit different. But two, it also is a way to experience what Atlas Tennis is all about, see what we offer in a quick 4 or 5 day trip, and then maybe be like, hey, this is actually a great summer option as well. So that's just an added piece of what we're doing in 2026 and super excited about.
And what's the price point for those spring break trips? Or does it vary depending on the
Yeah,
trip?
so the school trips vary based on what we're including. We can make it work pretty much with any budget for schools. We've gotten very creative in the past for, a more concise 5 day trip to, Florida, to a 9 day trip in Barcelona. Obviously, it's going to vary a little bit based
Sure.
on what's included in terms of, meals and what kind of hotel and how many activities. But the cool thing about it is it's super customizable. There's some other, options out there where it's kind of like this is what we offer and your school needs to fit into this. We're the opposite. We start with a conversation, learn about what is ideal for your school, for your team, and then we kind of work backwards from there. For our individual spring break trip through Atlas, that's just, for kids from wherever, that one is going to be around off the top of my head, I think it's 2,300 for the 5 days. And that includes, again, all the accommodations, all the transportation within Florida, tickets to Miami Open, all the tennis, a couple like kind of awesome team dinners. So when you kind of look at it that way, I think it's a pretty good value actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do people get registered to join one of your trips? Or how do they get in touch, or I should say, and how do they get in touch with you if they have questions?
Yeah, easiest way is just simple email. My email is ben@atlas.tennis. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. You can just Google Atlas Tennis or go to our Instagram. There's more than one way to kind of find that email or our contact form. So try to be as easily accessible as possible. My number is on there as well. You can just call or text, and get more information that way. Uh, for our spring break trip, the application is right on our website. You just go to atlas.tennis, click on trips, you'll see spring break, and then you can apply right there. For our summer trips, anyone that's interested, I can send the full application to them. We actually don't have the full application on our website because, I only send the application to people that are, really interested. Obviously, you just get a lot of passerbys on a website who are maybe a little bit curious, and I don't want them to have to go through the full application if they're not actually really considering it. So we have just a simple interest form that's a good place to start, and then we can kind of further the conversation from there. But I know that no one is going to go on our website and then without really having a conversation and learning more about what we do, sign up for a trip. There's going to be a little bit more of a one-on-one personal connection that we want to build with each family. So that's why we kind of start with, an email or a phone call or a text, whatever, just to familiarize ourselves with each other, and then go from there.
Yeah, and I want to just say to the parents that are thinking about doing this next year, please do have those conversations, whatever you're doing with your child, where you're sending them somewhere not with you. Make sure that you ask the questions, that you have that comfort level, because especially when they're traveling internationally, it's not so easy if something comes up, if they get sick or they get injured. You want that peace of mind of knowing how the trip is handling those things. And I can tell you, I've had those conversations with Ben. Atlas Tennis does a great job of managing and preparing for all the contingencies, but you as the parent need to have that peace of mind yourself. So please do reach out to Ben and have that conversation. Ben, you are exactly right. We will have the link to your website. We'll have your contact information, everything in the show notes at parentingaces.com. And I hope all of you will take a look at these amazing travel opportunities for your kids. Of all the places you mentioned, Ben, the only one I've been to myself is the Nadal Academy. I will vouch for an amazing experience in store for the kids that get to do that trip. But I'm sure the other places that you guys are going are equally phenomenal. And like I said, where do I sign up? How do I get to chaperone? I'll be a coach. I don't know. I'll do whatever you need.
Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. We're creative. I mean, we're also eager if there are parents out there that are interested in potentially being a part of the trip. We'll have those conversations. We've had coaches in the past who had their kids on the trip, and that actually worked incredibly well. So the answer is never no. It's always like, let's have a conversation. Let's figure it out, because we get that a lot. Parents want to come, and whether it's us helping them to plan their own trip that kind of runs concurrently, or if they're actually a part of the trip, kind of as a coach or a chaperone, we're eager to be creative with all those things to make it work and really give as many people this opportunity as possible. We want to truly change lives through tennis, and we do that by exposing people to these new experiences, and we can't do that unless we kind of have a yes mentality. So we're always looking to figure out ways to try new things, and whether that's bringing on new chaperones, bringing on podcast hosts to be a part of it, or whatever it may look like. We're very nimble. We're kind of still eager. We're still super creative and trying to be as customizable for every experience as we possibly can to, like I said, change lives through these experiences.